Hey there, Aubrey. What's shaking?
I'm great. How are you, Lindsay?
Fantastic, fantastic. Aubrey, we're talking a little bit about technology let me ask you a question first.
Okay, what could be? I had given some examples in case I ask you
Yeah.
a question, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can
yeah.
answer.
Well, what would you say is something that most people think of as beneficial, but is actually harmful in some ways?
And this was my idea, technology, right? In most
Mm,
cases, it is beneficial, it's so useful, but there can be, there's definitely a risk for addiction, too
yes.
much time on screen, not being as active. So can definitely be harmful in some ways.
Yeah, or kind of just losing our ability to think, like Google Maps. It's good. It's
Right.
great. Thank goodness. I would be lost somewhere right now in the woods. I don't know if it weren't for Google Maps.
Or like
But
we were talking about
sometimes,
recently, we're no
yeah,
longer memorizing phone numbers.
not
So if we don't
memorizing
have our phone,
phone.
we might not be able to call anyone we know.
Exactly. What if all the technology goes down someday and we don't know how to get from our
We
house
might
to the
be in
grocery
trouble.
store?
Right. That'd be crazy.
um, so, Aubrey, we're talking about a common mistake that we've heard lately. What is that mistake?
Yes. So, sort of the answer I was giving about technology, we often hear the mistake of using somehow instead of in some ways. Like
Hmm.
someone might say, technology is good somehow, but also has drawbacks. This is so tricky. The difference between somehow and sometimes, at times, or in some ways
Yeah.
is important, but tricky.
Yes, important, exactly. And sort of the way to do this is counterintuitive a little bit, right? What you would
Exactly.
think would make sense grammatically doesn't work in terms of
Right.
vocabulary.
This is
So,
tricky, right? Someone might say homework is good somehow when they mean in some ways or sometimes. I think
yes.
homework is good in some ways, negative in other ways.
Mhm.
And I can see how someone learning English would think that makes perfect sense to say somehow there,
No, but it doesn't. It doesn't.
right?
Yep. So, guys, go ahead and hit that follow button right now before we go any further in this episode to make sure you get 5 episodes a week from All Ears English. Aubrey, let's go into it. So, you mentioned the phrase in some ways.
Exactly, right? So you could answer this, oh, technology is good in some ways. This means partly, but not
Mm-hmm.
completely.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, in some ways, I'm like my mother, right? I'm
Oh,
saying they
yes. Aren't we
definitely
all?
have common, attributes,
Yeah.
but we're not exactly the same. In some ways, we're different.
Yeah, and I think the funny thing is the older we get, we realize that parts of us are
Yes,
just like our mother, and we
right?
are trying to be our mother, but we are in a way. I'm sure our listeners will identify with that, and they're smiling right now. So, next one, prescription drugs are beneficial in some ways, but can easily be abused. So, again, we can't say somehow in this context. This is what we should say instead, right, Aubrey?
Exactly, right? If we mean partly, but not entirely, instead of saying somehow, we would say in some ways, or we could also say in some aspects, right? Oh, this is
Mm.
beneficial in some aspects, but
Hmm.
has negative drawbacks.
All right. And there's another thing we can say instead of somehow in this context. What is it?
Yeah, and this is a little different if we say at times or sometimes. This
Mm.
means occasionally rather
Hmm.
than all of the time. So the two ways we see somehow used incorrectly, it would either need to be replaced with in some ways or sometimes or at
Yes.
times.
Yes. So, for example, at times I don't understand him, right?
Exactly. And this is a mistake we would hear somehow I don't understand him. Instead, we want to say sometimes or at times. This means occasionally, but not all of the time.
Or you can say sometimes she's late, right? She shows
Exactly.
up late. Yeah. Good.
Occasionally, she's late, right?
All right.
And then let's go into somehow. When would we
Yeah.
use this?
Yeah, there is a time and a place to use it, right? It does exist. This means in some way or by some means. All right. So this might be a little confusing for our listeners, the way we're
This is what's
defining it.
tricky. Mhm.
So let's give some sample sentences, Aubrey.
Yeah, so maybe somehow I was able to finish the project on time. So here
Mm,
it means by some means, right? I
right.
it's sort of I don't really understand how it happened. So
Yeah.
that's why we have the word how. Somehow I was
Yes.
able to do this.
Kind of like a miracle, right? In a
Yeah,
sense.
right?
Yeah.
The actual means of it happening is surprising. So then we say, how did that happen? Somehow.
Yes. And here's another one. You look different somehow. Did you get a haircut? So this means I don't really understand exactly how you look different, but you do look
Exactly.
different. Something about you is different.
Exactly, right? So you can maybe ask the question how to know which to use, right? Because for these
Mhm.
others, you wouldn't say how, right? Oh, technology is good somehow. We're not saying how is technology good? We're saying in which ways. So
Yeah.
this is sort of like what question are you answering?
Interesting. Okay. And there are some expressions, like some chunks that we might want to know that you might hear in movies or just out in the street. Carry on somehow is one of them.
Yeah.
To
Means
continue to
yeah.
preserve, yeah. Or go ahead. What does it mean,
Yeah, it
Aubrey?
means to continue or persevere
Yeah.
by some means, right? Somehow,
Yeah.
despite hardships or challenges.
Yeah. So, for example, Jim is moving to Chicago. We'll have to carry on somehow without him, right?
Yes.
So,
And
the
there you
hardship.
are sincere, right? Oh, we're sad
Mhm.
he's moving. We're going to have to figure out how to do things without him. But
Yeah.
we often hear this and use this sarcastically to be
Yes.
kind of playful, right?
Yeah.
I might, if I'm part of a sports team and I have to
Hmm.
leave early, be like, oh, I have
Hmm.
to leave at noon. You'll have to carry on somehow without me, like making a joke about how I'm the star player. Or the
Yeah,
team might
exactly.
be like, we'll have to carry on somehow without you.
Yeah, I feel like it's used more often in that way, sarcastically,
Yes.
don't you think? Feels that way.
Which I think is a little bit of a warning because if you're wanting to say it sincerely, be warned that because it's used sarcastically so much, someone might assume you're being sarcastic.
Yeah, especially in this scenario with Jim moving to Chicago, something like that, you wanna be
Right.
really
It's
careful.
like, wait, are you really going to miss him or are you being sarcastic? Maybe we're not sure.
Something
You'll have
like
to
that.
be really clear in the tone.
Exactly, and there's another one, Aubrey, what is it?
So this is somehow or other, and sometimes you'll hear somehow or another. I grew
Mm,
up saying somehow or other. So
okay.
for example, this means by some means or sort of in uncertain or undetermined ways. So you
Mhm.
might say somehow or other we'll figure out a solution.
Nice, love that. Okay,
And it
so
really has
t
the same meaning as somehow. You could just say somehow we'll figure out a solution,
right, that would be the simple thing, right? Just say,
right?
"Somehow we'll solve this issue."
Yeah,
Yep.
it's sort of used to emphasize that we have no idea, right? Somehow
Mhm.
or other adds that little bit of emphasis that, like, we don't know how. We have no idea what's going to happen.
Yes. All right, Aubrey, let's go into a role play. So here we are on a committee planning an upcoming event. Ugh, have you been on a lot of committees in your life, Aubrey?
I have had to be on like some fundraising committees for the school, things like that. It's so tricky because everyone's a volunteer
Yeah.
and you're counting on people to do what they've signed up to do, but they might not. It's very
That's
tricky.
probably hard. Oh my gosh, I can imagine
Yes.
that would be stressful for the people that are really in it, right? And they want to see
Yes.
it through.
And you
Yeah.
have to pick up the slack, right? That's an interesting
Mm.
idiom for if someone doesn't do their job, you have to fill in for them.
Yes, pick up the slack. That will be a bonus expression for today for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, good. So, Aubrey, here we go. Uh Traffic was awful, but somehow I was able to get here on time.
I hit traffic too. I'm surprised we both somehow made it on time. By the way, Janice let me know she's moving and won't be able to be on the committee anymore.
Okay, thanks for letting me know.
We'll have to figure out how to carry on somehow.
Do I detect a hint of sarcasm?
Maybe. In some ways, she was such a great part of the team, but sometimes it was difficult to reach an agreement.
I get it. We needed her, though. It's going to be tough to manage on our own.
Somehow or other, we'll figure it out.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of common uses here. Love this. So, the
Hmm.
first thing I said, Aubrey, was traffic was awful, but somehow I was able to get here on time. So, talking about kind of pointing to sort of it was a miracle that I got here, right?
Exactly, right? And this is an interesting way that we use it because you clearly know how you got there. You know which roads you took.
Right.
But like
Yes,
you said, the meaning here is like it's surprising that I got here on time. It was kind of a miracle.
exactly. It's not about the routes that I took or,
Right.
the roads. Exactly. And then what did you say?
And then I was saying I hit traffic too. I'm surprised we both somehow made it on time. Yeah,
Mhm.
same meaning here, like it's surprising.
Yes. And then you said Janice will have to be is moving, so can't be on the committee anymore. And you said we'll have to figure out how to carry on somehow. And here's where you could be expressing sarcasm without knowing it. Here you were expressing a little sarcasm, right?
Yeah, and I was even trying to use like a serious tone, but
Yeah.
because it's so commonly used sarcastically, this would be very common for someone to be
Mhm.
like, "Wait, are you being sarcastic?" We're not sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then you said maybe in some ways she was a great part of the team, but sometimes it was difficult to reach an agreement. So in
Yeah, and this
certain
is
ways. Mhm.
exactly right. These are the two common errors where someone might say somehow she was such a great part of the team, and but somehow it was difficult to reach an agreement. And those are both incorrect because we have these specific meanings of in some certain ways she was a
Yeah,
great part of the team. I'm thinking of specific ways. It's not this unknown. How was it? I don't know. We do know it
exactly.
was in some specific ways.
Love that. That's a good way to put it, Aubrey. I love that. And then we go to somehow, right? The unknown, a bit more unknown. So I said, we needed her though. It's going to be tough to manage on our own. And you said, somehow or other, we'll figure it out. So
Yes, and
that,
that this is that expression where you could just say somehow we'll figure it out, but I'm
Mhm.
sort of emphasizing like we don't know. It's going to be a little tricky like somehow or other. And it's
Mhm.
also an interesting way to sort of be more positive and hopeful about it, right? Somehow or
Yeah.
other we'll figure it out.
Yeah. So using somehow is kind of pointing to sort of, I don't know, the unknown, right? We haven't figured this thing out yet, but it's out there somewhere in a sense, right?
Exactly, right? We don't know the details. We don't know how it's going to happen, but
Mhm.
somehow it's all going to work out.
It's all gonna work out. Is there another episode our listeners should check out today?
Yeah, if you missed 2381, scroll up. It was just called Listen Today, No Pressure. Some really great phrases. You don't want to miss that one.
Yeah, we just recorded that one a few days ago. Super fun to record. You guys are going to love that episode. What's the takeaway? I mean, this is actually a tough one. As we got deeper into the episode today, I realized I understand why it's confusing for our listeners, right?
Absolutely. This is one of those mistakes that native speakers understand, right? This is a
Yes.
little complicated, the difference between somehow, sometimes, in some ways. So
Mhm.
today's tips will help you avoid this very common mistake. And of course, our message, right? Connection, not perfection. Don't, hesitate to start a conversation because you want to say one or the other. You're not positive which one is right. Just go for it. And as you're observing language, you'll start being more aware of which one is correct.
Exactly. And because this was a challenging topic today, I'd recommend going out into the world, trying to listen for these key words
Yes.
somehow, in some ways, and then go back and listen to the episode again and notice with that context that you've had from the listening, getting that input. All right. That's a good way to practice.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. This was a fun one.
All right, Aubrey. Talk to you soon. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.